Good afternoon, everyone, and the speakers. Welcome to NUS Engineering eOpen House 2021 Ask Us Anything session. This is a free-flow Q&A session, and at any point in time, you can submit your questions via the Zoom webinar Q&A button on your screen below. My name is Jonathan, and I'm an electrical engineering student under EScholars with a second major in IDP, or Innovation and Design program. To my left is Associate Professor Martin Buist, the Vice Dean of Undergraduate Programs. To his left is Associate Professor Liew, who is the Director of IDP. To her left is Associate Professor Alberto Corrias, the Director of EScholars Program. And lastly, Professor Richard Liew, the Acting Head of Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. Before we accept the questions from those who are tuning in, maybe I can start by asking Prof. Martin about the new syllabus for engineering. Now the speakers will take off their masks because we are abiding by sufficient safe distancing measures. So, Prof. Martin, recently NUS announced that there will be a new common curriculum for the Faculty of Engineering in this academic year. What is the new curriculum structure and how is it going to help the students?
Okay, so if we think about the whole curriculum, we offer the 4-year direct honors degrees. And to get one of these degrees, you need to take equivalent to 40 modules over 4 years. Okay, so if we think about how the 40 modules is broken down, at the start we have 15 modules, which are what we now have our common curriculum, right? So this is all the engineering students will take the same. As the Dean mentioned earlier, we've distilled out those key elements which are common and brought them down into the common curriculum. So then on top of that, there's another 15 modules, which is your major. And we have the final 10 modules is what we call unrestricted elective space. Okay, and it's these 10 unrestricted spaces that are the key to the really unparalleled flexibility in the new curriculum. Because at NUS, a second major happens to be 10 modules, the same size as your free space, right? So you could take a second major from any of the faculties and it will fit. You don't need to overload, you don't need an extra semester, right? It just works. Same goes for specializations, 5 modules. And our minors, 5 modules. So in that free space, you can take up to 2 specializations or minors. And so with this flexibility, you can basically choose your own path. You can choose to go deep into your chosen major, or you can go broad, do your major, and then take some complementary things from elsewhere, even outside engineering.
Speaking about these complementary and diverse options in engineering, I am a student of IDP and I've experienced and benefited from the design thinking curriculum. But one of the questions directed at Prof. Liew is, will the workload in IDP be very heavy, and how can I manage if I'm taking IDP?
The IDP fits in the 40 MCs that Martin talked about, which is the unrestricted space. So it's actually just part of your whole 4 years curriculum. So in a sense, you're not overloading. We would require you to start early because the second major requires you to first of all build a foundation on design thinking and innovations before you do the design projects. So you kind of have to start early, and what that means is that your 40 MCs or 10 modules essentially gets spread out over your 4 years. And you would start in the second semester of year 1 with a design thinking class, you go on to do an innovation, and then you go on to do all the other projects. So in terms of overload, there's no overload whatsoever because you would graduate with a BEng, whichever department you're at, plus the IDP as the second major, and all of that to be done within 4 years, right? Having said that though, because IDP is going to be pretty project heavy, it does mean that it's going to be a little bit more intense in a sense, right? Because projects require you to work together with people and making sure that your project is eventually going to work, and that always puts a stress on anybody anyway. So because of the project side of things, you do find that it's going to be intense, but otherwise it just fits into your 4-year degree program. So nothing more than that.
Could I add on to that? Because I'm an IDP student and under eScholars too, which is a 3-year accelerated program. And personally, I can testify that the workload is manageable. And speaking about eScholars, we have a question directed at Prof. Alberto. which is what is the intake of eScholars every year?
So every year we aim at admitting 50 to 60 students into the eScholars program, and coming from all departments. So we do not apply any department quota. We just take all the applications and then evaluate them independently of what department is applied to, as long as it's within engineering, of course.
For the application process and the following assessment and screening of candidates, is it purely dependent on academic results, or will you take a holistic approach to assess students and see who is suitable to join this program?
So academic results are only the start of the evaluation, actually. We take that as a shortlist criteria, and then from then on we perform interviews on all shortlisted candidates. And what we look for in those interviews is evidence that the person we are interviewing developed his knowledge, his passion for engineering, even beyond books, beyond memorizing things to get a good grade for a test. And that's what we are looking for actually in an eScholar.
So as an eScholar, and if I would like to take IDP too, how would it be in terms of the mapping of modules, in terms of FYP, and which STEM to go on NOC, or is it possible to go on NOC and SEP at the same time? Maybe Prof. Liew could elaborate first, and then Prof. Alberto could continue.
If the question is specific up to whether eScholars and an IDP student, a person who has actually both, can go on NOC and SEP, there is no question about that, because with IDP we do give space for students to do that. And in fact, Jonathan, you yourself is an NOC student at this point. It's just that unfortunately COVID has sort of stopped you in your tracks in as far as being able to go overseas is concerned. But nonetheless, we do have students who have done both and did well for it. For non-eScholars who are IDP students, definitely there's no issues about that. It's so much easier to do, I mean, admittedly, because eScholars have to complete their degree programs in 3 years, whereas a regular student, a regular engineering student with IDP would take 4 years to complete, right? So we would leave your semester 2 of year 3 to be available for NOC. And in that semester, essentially it's your semester 6 of your studies, we do not have any IDP modules that are scheduled, just so that you can go on and pursue, you know, things that you guys would like to do, which is student exchange or even NOC. So definitely not a problem, NOC and IDP, and you know, even eScholars as well.
Yeah, maybe I can add from the eScholar side. In fact, I mean, Jonathan is a testimony of the fact that it's very much possible to do IDP and eScholars and go to NOC. I'd like to add one thing, linking back to what Martin was saying. As a new curriculum kicks in, one of the key things that it will be increased flexibility, and therefore combining various programs, it will become more and more easy as we go along. Therefore, all this combination SEP and NOC will be a lot more achievable by students.
Maybe let's move away from IDP and eScholars for a while and talk about civil engineering. So, Prof. Liew, is civil engineering a good environment for women especially to work in?
The answer is definitely yes, because we have a big cohort of females that work in the built environments. That been testified by the earlier presentations that the number of our graduates actually are female students. Currently, to give you some idea, about 30 to 40% of a student actually are female students in the civil engineering.
So when I'm a student, I always hear that mechanical engineering does everything smaller than a building, and civil engineering does everything bigger than a building. But does civil engineering actually include like designing the interiors of different buildings?
Okay, civil engineering is a very wide, interdisciplinary professions. We deal with big engineering, that's definitely. So whatever you can see, they appear to be very, very big, ranging from buildings, like most of the HDB houses that in Singapore. We design stadiums, hospitals, integrated resorts, for example. It is the iconic building in Singapore. going to the extent that we build bridges, we build harbors, we build ports that include airports and seaports. So, including the planning or the transportations for a smart city or sustainable city, we need transportation systems. So we go across all disciplines. So we, as a civil engineers, we must know the basic of physics and mathematics to do the modeling of very complex systems.
Martin,
Yes.
I know that some universities like NTU actually can allow students to do their final year project at an overseas institution, and some others would be able to have industry partners to do their thesis. Will the engineering curriculum in NUS allow students to do the same?
Okay, so actually we greatly encourage industry-linked final year projects already, to the point where before your final year project, people will go on an industrial attachment, right, for a company. Actually doesn't have to be in Singapore. My sister, believe it or not, is an NUS grad, and she went to Germany for her IA. It was a few years ago now. But if you go to IA and you come back and you'd like to continue with a similar project for your FYP, still linked to the company, then greatly encourage that flexibility is already there.
The new engineering curriculum seems to really encourage flexibility and exploration of students' own interests. However, if I would like to do 2 different engineering degrees in the same amount of time, is it possible with this new curriculum, or are there any other avenues which I can explore 2 different engineering degrees?
So the way the curriculum is set up, then yes, it will be possible to do 2 engineering majors, as you could do a second major outside, you can do a second major as another engineering program. It's not currently in the admissions forms, okay, so you just have to be patient and apply for your first major first.
With respect to applying for NUS engineering, due to COVID-19, many students might now be applying locally instead of overseas. Does this mean that the competition will increase, and will the cutoff increase, or will there be more seats given to engineering students?
That's a good question, and it's somewhat out of my hands. But we do have some flexibility to take more good students if we have more good students applying.
Moving back to IDP again, Prof. Liew, as an IDP student, can I embark on both NOC and SCP without EScholars in that case? And would this be more difficult because of the increased number of projects that I have to take?
Yes, I would be honest about this. NOC already takes you away anyway. I mean, barring COVID situations, right? NOC typically takes you away from Singapore. Student exchange likewise takes you away from Singapore. So in a sense, there's no real necessity to try and aim for both. We allow 1 semester where you can do one stint of one thing or the other. If you really need to do that, we would advise you to clear some of the project modules a little bit earlier so that you can perhaps go on a whole year NOC. Now that has happened before. So we work around it by, on a case-by-case basis. If the student team, in a project team, right, because our students work in project groups, if they agree that some of their teammates are going away on NOC for a whole year, we would allow it to happen by making special arrangements for you to complete your project, especially in the 3rd year, a little bit quicker than usual. So that could still be possible, but it doesn't happen too often, as far as I know. Yeah.
As an IDP student myself, I really enjoyed prototyping in the digital and electronics laboratory.
Yeah.
But as I heard that chemical engineers usually deal with many big systems that are usually more industry-based, how would IDP complement a chemical engineering degree?
We do have chemical engineering students in our midst. Typically, we would work with our colleagues in the chemical engineering or even biomedical labs where they have a lot more wet lab facilities, which IDP is not currently, we do not currently have wet lab facilities within IDP. So my colleagues would work with colleagues from the other departments with those type of facilities so that they can work on projects that are relevant to the discipline that they are in, or related to the industry partners that they have. So we are flexible. We work across the different departments. I mean, we're all in the same family anyway, so it's not really a big problem. It just has to be worked out specifically to what projects you are working on and where we should be taking you to in the departments. So that's fine. Yeah, no issues with that.
I would like to direct the next question to Prof. Liew. With the world becoming more and more digital, what kind of job prospects will civil and environmental engineers have, and could you elaborate more on the different kinds of projects that they could take up?
Yes. This is what we call the Industrial 4.0 transformations, which required skills of engineers to know the digital and data skill that they have, so that there's as a civil engineer or environmental engineer, we must learn how to use this type of digital skill to design, to build, and to manage our infrastructures and our environments. So for civil engineers, we go for digitizations on all the design. For example, we do the design in collaborations with the architects and then with the construction team. From the onset of architectural design, go into the structural design, then go into the construction management, and in future we go into the maintenance of the infrastructures of buildings. So with the common set of the documents, which is digitized and work in the common platform, all the parties actually integrate together to make it more productive and more integrated. Right. So we also use this technology to monitor the environments in planning, design the system that we have low emissions of carbons, for example, into the environment. We trace the pollutions and make sure that our reservoirs, our air are clean. Okay, so these are the new way of doing things. On top of it, do have drone technologies, going to automations involving how to build houses in the factories. Then this is called the manufacturing methods, manufacture house in the factories and then send to the site and stack it up to form a high-rise building. So Singapore actually take a global lead in this area. Quite exciting about these technologies, and a number of smart cities are learning how the way we construct Singapore.
Prof. Alberto, as an e-scholar, I've benefited a lot from all the different perks and benefits that e-scholars brings. But could I ask you to elaborate more on about the academic and developmental benefits that e-scholars might give us, or is it just simply a program that is accelerated?
Right, thanks. That's a very good question. So, of course, the Scholars Program is a scholarship with all the benefit of perks, as Jonathan mentioned, but we actually introduced a few key elements that we believe are very important, and there is, as an e-scholar, you have the opportunity to take. Number one is a set of modules that we call them aspirational projects that are intended for students to develop their own ideas in a very safe environment, in a sense that even if like the idea that maybe you don't know whether it's going to work or not, you can go for it in this module, and in collaboration with your mentor, then you can work out the details of the project and then getting credits for it. In a very flexible environment, this can be done during the semester, or if you want to leave time to study for the exam during the semester, even in between the semester during the summer break, for example. We also introduced, in collaboration with the Institute of Engineering Leadership, a module that these scholars can take that is essentially putting them in contact with industry leaders to develop their leadership skills. On top of that, from an academic point of view, the e-scholars actually stay at the university town, which is not just a hostel as many people think. It's not just a place where you go to sleep in the evening and have fun with your friends. It actually entails an academic component, which is the University Town College program, which tends to develop, to make students interact with students from other faculties as well, to develop them holistically. And that's open to e-scholars. And last but not least, there were already mentioned the enrichment programs that the e-scholars have access to, including the NUS Overseas College program, where you would in turn in an overseas startup. Hopefully, when COVID is over, you'll actually go overseas. And the student exchange program as well.
Speaking about development of students overseas, I know SEP is a very good avenue to have that holistic development at a partner university. But however, what are the number of students every year that actually manage to apply for SEP? And is it difficult to map the modules from overseas universities back into NUS, Prof. Martin?
Okay, maybe the second part first. So actually we are not looking exactly like for like when we're mapping modules back. You only need 50% similarity and we're happy to accept. So we have in each department a huge list of modules that have been successfully mapped directly previously from all the different partner universities. And if what you want to do is on the list, no issue. If it's a new module, then we just take a look. But I don't think I've ever seen anyone who hasn't been able to go on SEP because they couldn't map their modules. It doesn't happen. Numbers, roughly a third will go on SEP. It is quite popular.
I see. Moving back to IDP again, IDP, I know that it is something that is very heavily focused on the two huge project modules that are both 1 year long. And in these project modules, the teammates are usually one of the most important things that will determine how the students' experience will be like. So in IDP, do students actually get to choose their own project teammates, or is it picked for us?
Well, we actually encourage you to find your own teammates because that takes the problem off our hands, basically, right? So in fact, we encourage you to self-propose, all right? And in the last semester that just went by, we organized a series of seminars from the different public agencies in Singapore to talk about the problems that they are working on. And the idea was to try and excite students about what are the open problems that they could still work on, and to get an understanding of who is doing what and what can they do on their part. And arising from that, that was a success. We had about 12 groups of students, coming to about 50 students then, who actually self-proposed their own projects, right? And they found their own partners as well, in teammates, I mean, right? So for those who are not able to find teammates, then the process is that you would bid for projects from a list that we have, and we will partner you according to the choices of your peers, basically. But otherwise, we really encourage you to self-propose because that's when we know that you'll be most motivated to work on the project and you will put in all your time and effort to work on it. So the passion comes through in the self-proposed projects. And when you bring on your own team, it also means that you know that this is a team of people that you can work with, and that's why it contributes to better success in the projects. So yeah, indeed, no problems with that. So do bring along your teammates and tell us what you want to work on. I'll just give you an example of one project that came through this way. And it was about a project that is to turn a regular old combustion engine motorbike into an electric bike. And the students are currently working on it now. They bought their own motorbike, combustion engine motorbike, and they have rigged it into an electric bike, which is supposed to run anytime soon. And that was very impressive because they started working on it even in December, before the term started in January. And that's why they have been able to progress very well. Now, this group of students also went on to think about how can they manage the charging of the electric bike itself. And they're working on a technology that they are very excited about. I shan't say too much about this because I think there's IP related here. So they've thought about the whole whole string of things that they had to do in order to get to a place that they feel that they can be successful and they can actually take it out to be a startup later on. So I wish them all the best, and they're really doing well with it.
As an eScholar, when I was applying for the eScholars program, I actually did also look into NTU's Renaissance Engineering. And personally, I got actually received offers on both, but I chose eScholars in the end. However, Prof. Alberto, what are the main differences between NTU's REP and our NUS eScholars?
Right. So these are both scholarship programs. The key difference, there are quite a number actually. The one that I think is the most important is in the academics. So the REP program is structured as essentially as an engineering science degree with a specialization
followed by a master's in management of technology. Whereas for us, for eScholars, we give the student the freedom to choose any of the existing departments of their choice, be mechanical engineer, chemical engineer, civil engineer, anything. And so that they graduate with that degree, which is accredited by EAB, the Engineering Accreditation Board. And on top of that, for the master's part, after the undergraduate section, we also encourage students to explore by giving flexibility of choosing any master's degree of their choice, as long as it's a Master of Science within NUS. And so that's, I think, is one of the key differences. The other one that I like to mention is the University Town experience. So the idea of the residential college is unique to NUS, and we were very interested as an eScholar program, as a premier program, to team up with one of the residential colleges. We team up particularly with the Residential College 4, although eScholars can apply also to other residential colleges as well in University Town. And that it sounds maybe to you, oh, it's just another dorm, but it's really a different experience as a living and learning opportunity. And it allows you, number one, to create your own community of students, and number two, to take modules within the college.
Yeah, I can definitely test.
If you allow me to answer the question, why is it so different of our engineering program compared to others? I think most important is our interdisciplinary. You see, for example, our design project, our integrated design projects, or our makerspace, where all disciplines of engineers, including from those from School of Design, environmental, including architectural students or the project management team people, work with a team of our engineers together in the design. They learn from each other because we believe in solving complex problems. That's how actual projects outside are doing. As an engineering team, we are trying to solve complex problems involving different disciplines of engineers and planners together. So I think our curriculum do create that kind of opportunity for students to work in a group like that.
Thanks so much. Thank you everyone for your questions. Unfortunately, we're running out of time and we have to pass over to the next session. Do stay on to hear more about electrical and computing engineering, which will be starting their sharing session at 2 p.m. Thank you.